welcome to Christian Answers. My name is Pastor Jeff Short, and today we're going to be talking about the whole topic of abortion in the United States. We've seen a number of different laws being passed in states. For example, Georgia just passed a anti-abortion law. Number of other states, Wisconsin, we're seeing Mississippi, Alabama now has passed restrictions on abortion. So a lot of the different states that tend to be overwhelmingly pro-life, they are beginning to move aggressively to pass legislation that would either limit abortions or outright ban abortions, or the example in Alabama. So why are they doing this? They are doing this because they believe that we are very close to seeing the end of Roe v. Wade. They believe that because of the conservative majority in the Supreme Court, President Bush has appointed 2 conservative justices, and many people now believe that the infamous Roe v. Wade decision is on its way out. And we all hope and we all pray that that is the case. I recently was listening to Dr. James Dobson on his radio program Family Talk, and he was interviewing a pro-life activist. And this woman was very, very excited about the fact that she is totally and utterly convinced that Roe v. Wade is going to be reversed in the near future. And she's excited about the heartbeat laws that are going into effect in many different states. That is the whole idea that as soon as you can detect the heartbeat of a baby in the womb, then abortion is illegal. And that doctors who continue to perform abortions on babies that have a observable and detectable heartbeat will be prosecuted under the law, and penalties, fines, and even jail time will be their penalty if they continue to do abortions after a heartbeat is detected. So there are different laws that are being put into effect, at least before they're challenged. Now, these laws, of course, all of these laws are going to be challenged in court. That's the problem. But the interview with this pro-life activist on Family Talk, James Dobson, asked her, said, now you're very optimistic, you're very confident, you're very excited. What makes this different from the other hopes that we've had in the past that Roe v. Wade would be reversed? And she said, well, the fetal heartbeat laws have the potential of convincing more people than any other pro-life legislation, because it makes so much sense that when you can detect a heartbeat, then there is a person there. Heartbeat is a sign of life, and if you can detect a heartbeat in the womb, then that's the sign that life is there. No abortions, no killing of this baby with a heartbeat. And so she was very optimistic that that would convince people, not just intellectually but emotionally. Yes, we cannot kill a human person with a heartbeat, so on and so forth. Now the problem is, the problem with this pro-life activist, and James Dobson was actually getting close to questioning her on this, the people who are in favor of abortion, they're not doing so for intellectual reasons, and they are doing so for the ability to do whatever they want to do. They're doing it for rebellious reasons. They're doing it for self-will reasons. They're doing it for self-authority. And they're not going to reason the way this pro-life activist was saying that they're going to reason. She also underestimates the power of the peer pressure on the conservative justices in the Supreme Court. These guys, like a Brett Kavanaugh, like a John Roberts, yes, they are considered part of the conservative majority, but they are now also facing the peer pressure and the social pressure, and their status as justices and their status as leaders in this country, they are now under a lot of pressure. And the pro-life activist that was talking to James Dobson is simply underestimating or is naively uninformed or ignorant about how much peer pressure that these justices receive. And you look at a Brett Kavanaugh and you look at a John Roberts, and these are the guys who, according to Ben Shapiro, for example, and other commentators, are not going to reverse Roe v. Wade. They don't want to be known as the justices that reverse Roe v. Wade. They don't want to be the revolutionaries. They want a very gradual, they want a very orderly process of governing and judging and making decisions. And they don't want violent revolution, or they don't want tumult brought into society. They don't want demonstrations, people marching in the street, people setting cars on fire, riots in the cities. They don't want the potential of riots and disruptions in society. So they would rather sociologically, gradually chip away at a bad decision like Roe v. Wade. But a lot of experts are saying even the conservative, even the people that were appointed for that very purpose to reverse Roe v. Wade, they are inclined not to reverse it simply because they don't want a revolution to occur in society. Now, I don't like that thinking. I don't believe that that's a valid form of thought, because the people on the left, they don't care about revolution. They'll start a revolution. We saw that with the so-called LGBTQ revolution just less than a decade ago. They don't mind ripping up the institutions in our country. They don't mind the upheaval and the social unrest and all of the other negative consequences of radical change. They don't mind that. So why should the people on the right, why should the conservatives be overly concerned about disrupting society and causing division and causing tumult in society? Why should we be the ones that are always the guardians of the peace, while the people on the left are, fomenting revolution, and they see nothing wrong with that? So we just have to put up with their revolution, but we can't do anything revolutionary that changes society, or else we're the ones that are disruptors of peace. No, there's a double standard there. But the problem is that's the way the Republicans and the conservatives in power have been governing for the last 50 years or so. They're the ones that seem to worry about changing something that might disrupt something. The people on the left, they just go ahead and change the thing, and then we have to react to that. So unfortunately, the way the conservatives and the Republicans in power have been moving and acting in the last few decades, they are very, very skeptical of radical change. So you may have one or two conservative justices on the Supreme Court that don't want to actually reverse Roe v. Wade. So that's something that we have to take into consideration. Where is this pro-life activist? She's excited. She's like, okay, we're going to see Roe v. Wade. It's going down. And she's all excited. And she sees all of these anti-abortion laws being passed in the many states. It is exciting to see all of these laws being passed that are against abortion. But we have to remember that none of these laws, not even one of them, is going to take effect unless it gets through the courts, because every one of them will be challenged. Specifically, the latest one in Alabama, the one that basically outlaws abortion totally. It doesn't even allow any exceptions for rape or incest, the so-called exceptions. I don't believe in them, because after all, when you get it right down to it, why should the innocent baby die because of someone else's mistake? It was not the fault of the innocent child that the child, he or she, was conceived through a crime. It wasn't the child's in the womb's fault that the father was a rapist. It wasn't the fault of the baby, so why should the baby be punished by death? Why should the baby be executed for the crimes of the father? So there are all kinds of problems with allowing for an exception, like rape or incest. So Alabama evidently said, we're not going to allow any of those exceptions, and they're going to pass a law, as long as the governor signs the bill, that will allow total ban on abortion in Alabama. Now, what are the chances of that law ever seeing the light of day and actually implemented in society? Well, not much unless Roe v. Wade is overturned. But that's the whole point. For a lot of these laws, they're simply asking the courts to take up the case. They're simply inviting the courts to make rulings. And then if they don't get a favorable ruling, then they appeal. And then if the appeals court rules, then they will appeal again, and so on and so forth, working its way up to the Supreme Court. That's the whole purpose of these laws. These laws are not, the people who wrote these laws in states like Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Wisconsin, some of these other states, the people who wrote these, the Republicans, the conservatives that crafted these laws, these pro-life laws, they don't actually expect them to ever see the light of day, but they're challenges to Roe v. Wade. And that's the whole point. We now believe that we can challenge Roe v. Wade and that there's an opportunity here for something that can be done. Now, why challenge them right now? Why not wait until a possible second term of Donald Trump? The problem there is that there are a lot of conservatives now that are not thinking that Donald Trump will win a second term. And the reason they're thinking he might not win a second term is that he barely won the first term as president. And a lot of the people who voted for him the first term are not necessarily happy with him and wouldn't necessarily vote for him a second time because of the failure to produce on some of the promises he made. For example, the wall, immigration, another thing, Obamacare reversal, and so on and so forth. You have some people who are not really happy with Donald Trump, and you have some actual mainstream Republicans who are not happy with him, never were happy with him. And so there's the possibility, there's maybe the good possibility that he may not actually win a second term. So then there would be a radical leftist Democratic president who would then appoint Supreme Court justices on the far left, and then there would be no chance of reversing Roe v. Wade. So a lot of the states, the conservative states, are very much interested in getting a challenge to Roe v. Wade happening in the next year and a half to 2 years while Donald Trump is in office, and while no other justices appointed by any liberal leftist presidents are on the bench. And they also feel that possibly Trump, if things work out, he might even be able to appoint a third Supreme Court justice to the bench. And that would be a blessing. But even if he doesn't get a chance to appoint a third Supreme Court justice to the bench, still there may be enough votes on the Supreme Court to reverse Roe v. Wade. It just depends on the right court case that comes before the court willing to look at the case, and then the 5 conservative justices willing to actually take the bold step in dismantling a bad decision, the 73 Roe v. Wade decision. Now, there's a lot of ifs in that whole equation. A lot of things still have to happen, which is why this pro-life activist that was talking to James Dobson on his radio show, Family Talk, is probably too optimistic right now and probably too confident that something is actually going to happen, and really needs to step back and say, look, nothing in politics is a guarantee. you can have all the votes lined up and you can have everything in order, and then something can go wrong. And that's the same way. And you also have to understand the sinful nature of man. The people who are pushing for abortion and who are pushing for abortion rights and the right of a mother to kill her baby, they are fanatics. They are fanatical in their rebellion against God. Do you think a heartbeat law, do you think they're going to be persuaded by logic? No. You think they're going to be persuaded by reason? No. Do you think they're going to be persuaded by any rational method to change their mind? No, they're not going to. In fact, they're going to step up their political and social efforts. Activists are going to step up their efforts to try to stir up people emotionally against anything that the pro-life movement wants to interject. For example, this Alabama law, even though it would ban abortion and it would impose stiff penalties or fines and jail time even to abortion doctors who continue to defy the law if this law is passed and then approved and implemented, even though it would not punish the women who have had abortions, the abortion activists still whip up that emotional, irrational fear that, oh, they're going to imprison women up to 10 years. They're going to prosecute women, and they're going to punish women, and they're going to jail women, and they're going to impose all kinds of hardship on women and pick on women who have had abortions, even though that is not in the bill. Just that fear alone causes millions and millions and millions of people to think that the anti-abortion laws are bad, to think that women's rights are being taken away. You hear this all the time. The abortion activists are telling people all the time, left and right, that abortion is a woman's reproductive health issue, or it's a health issue, or it's a medical issue, or it's a woman's health care issue. It has nothing to do with health care. It has nothing to do with a medical necessary procedure. It has everything to do with a woman having the right to simply kill her child. Because in 99% of the cases, there is no health issue with the baby. The health issue is a smokescreen. It's trying to link two things that are not related. The baby in the womb is a separate human life. It deserves all the human rights that are given to anyone else in society. And it shouldn't be used as an excuse for abortion, simply saying that, well, a woman's health issues make abortion necessary. No, they don't. It's not a health issue. It's not a medical issue. Giving birth to a baby does involve medical issues, and there are health issues connected with giving birth. But there are health issues connected with having an abortion, and there are medical issues connected with having an abortion. So you have medical issues involved, whether it's an abortion or whether it's a live birth. And there is no greater risk to have a live birth than there is to have an abortion. In fact, because many of these abortion mills and these abortion clinics do not even have to follow the standards of hospitals and delivery rooms, oftentimes there are more complications related to abortions because they don't have to have the same medical cleanliness standards, or they don't have to have the same standards of professionals in there. Oftentimes the facilities that they're performed these abortions are not equipped with all kinds of the latest medical technology that we see in hospitals where live births are are done. So it's actually safer to have a live birth than it is to have an abortion. So there isn't this medical health crisis that we hear about the pro-life activists talking about. That is a lie. That is just a rationale. That's just an excuse for abortion. And so we have to see through those. But on the other hand, we also have to realize, though, that even though these are lies of the pro-abortion activists, they do persuade people. Millions and millions of Americans are persuaded by these lies. And that's why when James Dobson interviews this pro-life activist on his program, and she is super confident that Roe v. Wade is going to fall, she is overconfident in that because she underestimates the power of evil, and she underestimates the sinfulness of the human heart. And you can have the best idea and you can have the most righteous idea, but when you mix that with sinful humanity, you're going to get opposition to that righteousness. And the pro-life cause is a righteous cause. We are trying to uphold the unique dignity of human life at every stage. And in this specific instance, it's the beginning stage, life in the womb, made in the image of God. God created that baby in the womb just as much as he created anyone walking around the earth today. Everyone is made in the image of God. And so everyone has human dignity and is special in the eyes of God. They deserve human rights. And to take the life of an innocent baby in the womb, like the pro-abortion people want to do, and which is happening right now every day, 60 million babies have been killed since Roe v. Wade in 73. To do that, that's evil. And so just to say, okay, we have the number of Supreme Court justices, we can overturn Roe v. Wade, just to have everything line up on paper and just to have theoretically the possibility of this happening doesn't mean it's a done deal. And so we have to be very, very careful to stop thinking, okay, it's already a fact. We've already got the justices. They're all lined up. And all we need is a court case, and we can get Roe v. Wade turned over and abolished, and it's a done deal. No, it's not a done deal. Even if you have all your ducks in a row, and even if everything is lined up, the thing we have to do is we have to ask God and pray and be on our knees and say, God, this seems to be a great opportunity to eliminate a big evil that has been looming over our country for decades and decades. This Roe v. Wade decision. I've been to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. in every January 21st or 22nd or 23rd, around that area. There is a huge march in Washington, D.C. And I've been out there. I've marched with the thousands of pro-life people, and we've prayed, and we've marched for life, and we've marched for the end of Roe v. Wade, and we've done that time and time again. And now it's over 40 some years since Roe v. Wade, and the power of evil has shown itself in that here we are over 4 decades into this abortion fight, and we still have abortion. Even though if you ask the person on the street, do you think that a woman should be able to abort her child at any stage of development up until birth, they will say no. Even though they will say that, we have on the courts this Roe v. Wade decision that basically says that a woman has the right to kill her baby up until the point of delivery, essentially. And even though that decision was made a long time ago, it's still here. And that shows you how evil can get into a society and entrench itself in society and be nearly impossible to push out. But we are at a specific point in time right now where we do have certain things lined up. We do have a pro-life president, at least in word and in deed. Whether that's his conviction or not, deep down inside, we don't know. And at this point, it's really irrelevant, because as long as he continues to appoint at least theoretically conservative pro-life justices, that's all we can ask for. We can't read into the hearts of the president. We can't read into the hearts of these justices. All we can do is do our best to appoint judges who will take seriously the pro-life argument. And it looks like right now we have a majority who do take seriously the pro-life argument. But we can't think that that's enough, because evil is strong and evil is powerful. And even though we do our best, the enemy of God, Satan, or the Lucifer, the devil, the fallen angel, and his demons, they are going to oppose all that's good. And so even though we may think that we're very close to reversing Roe v. Wade, that doesn't mean it's a done deal because of the power of evil. And so we're going to see over the next few months, as some of these laws work their way up to the Supreme Court, we're going to see the forces of evil come out in full force. And so we need to be praying and asking God to have mercy on our nation and to spare the life of these children by reversing Roe v. Wade. And that would give states the right to ban abortion outright, like the Alabama law. And that would greatly curtail the number of children dying through abortion every year. So there is a real hope that this could happen, but it's not a done deal, and we need to continue to pray. Now, I think sometimes the activists downplay the power of prayer. They do acknowledge, in theory, yes, we need to pray and we need to be on our knees, but they're all about, a lot of them, politics, pressure, calling your representative, marching, doing all of these things that all the other special interest groups do. Only we need to do it better. That seems to be their method, that we need to be better at pressuring, be better at politics than the other people. And while we do need to be doing all we can in every area, including politics and electing candidates and all sort of things, final analysis, it's got to be God. God has to move the hands of these rulers. He has to work in the hearts of the Supreme Court justices. He has to work in the hearts of these lawmakers in the different states to produce the documents that go before the Supreme Court. So we need to pray. And so that's the main message today, is continue to pray for the pro-life cause. We may be close to seeing a victory, but we need to continue to pray.